It's Zarek from Real Chiropractic Dynamics, and I'm delighted to be here today with, and I want to get the name right, Atle Torstensen. Did I get it?
Almost, almost.
You do.
Torstensen.
Okay. Yeah, I hate when I'm on podcasts and people butcher my name, so I always try and get it
Just
right.
call me
But the
Just
but
call
the
me
first
Atle.
name's good, Atle.
Yeah, that's perfect, man.
Okay, perfect. And well, the reason I wanted to get you on the podcast, I'm heading more in like a Gonstead direction, and I know that you've done a little bit about that in the past. And the way we met, I'm in fifth year now. For anyone tuning in, I'm fifth year about at the BCC, about to graduate. We met whenever I was in second year. It was for the Lyceum, the BCC Lyceum, and
Yeah.
I got sent up to the airport, and my job was to direct the speakers to the taxis. So I'm standing there, and I had a little sign for everybody, and I'm standing there with the sign, waiting for one speaker to come. I direct them to the taxi, but then I have a few hours to kill, and it's a Friday afternoon, and I thought, well, why don't I go and have a beer while I'm waiting? I go have a beer, come back, welcome the next guest, go back, have a beer. And you were the last one, and I think by the time you got there, I was pretty jolly. I'd had a few by then.
I had a few, and I think you went to the toilet, so I kind of missed you there in the beginning.
That's right. I forgot about that. So I was
Yeah.
standing there, and
I
I'd
was
had too
waiting for
many.
somebody to stand there with a sign and stuff, and there was nobody there. And then, like 10 minutes after, you came running there.
Yes, I had a couple of beers, and then I was standing there with my sign, and the beers were taking effect on me at this point. I'm like, I really need to run to the bathroom. And I spoke broken Spanish to this old lady beside me. I was like, can you just stand here with this sign, and a big chiropractor is going to come and say hello? And then I came charging back, and there you were. So that's how we met a couple of years ago, and we got to talking. And I know that you've had a really interesting career, which maybe we can explore a little bit within the next hour. And yeah, if you can go ahead, thank you for joining us. And go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, because it's a fascinating career story you've had.
I graduated from Palmer almost 30 years ago, 28 years ago. Um, got pretty much went back home to Norway. We still have a 1-year mandatory internship in Norway, so I had to work for another chiropractor in Norway for a year before I could start my own. I ended up staying with him for two years because at the meantime in his clinic I started working in the National Olympic Training Center with the track and field national team, and then I became team chiropractor for a very good handball team who won the European Cup a year after. So I got into the sports part very early. I was only 24 when I graduated. I'm 52 now, so married and 2 kids, and who are grown up. A boy who's 22 and a girl who's 20. She's starting chiropractic school in February.
Where's she going?
She's gonna go to Denmark.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and so I'll probably be commuting back and forth to Denmark at least once a month and put on some workshops and stuff.
Oh man,
For
that's
the
a shame
kids,
she didn't go to BCC then in
down
that
there,
case.
so I can make sure she learns how to adjust properly. But I've been teaching I've been lecturing a few times in Denmark, and it's a nice city and a very nice atmosphere, and they got some good people coming out from Denmark.
So you were right from the word go getting involved in the sports side of things?
Yeah,
Okay.
very early. Yeah, right from the word go, because the clinic that I worked in, that I started working in when I graduated, they had a physiotherapist, and he was the physiotherapist of this elite handball team. And then he saw me start doing stuff with shoulders and wrists and elbows and ankles and knees, and he got pretty fired up quickly. So he asked me to join in with them, and then I also joined another handball team as their team doctor, and then a football team, and then I had in the weekends I had the national team in track and field. So I was pretty busy there for a couple of years.
So you were in your associateship, because I know you got deep into the Gonstead stuff. Were you doing Gonstead at that clinic? You were specialized, or?
Yeah, he was a Gonstead doctor. He still is. He's still working.
Right.
And I grew up. I did my first seminar at Manhorb about 2 weeks before I started my first trimester at Palmer. So I
Wow.
started checking out the Gonstead technique before I even started school. And during my years at Palmer, I probably went to 32 or 33 seminars at Manhorb. And then I did the Troxel intern program, and I interned with a guy called Herb Woods, who's doing seminars now in Gonstead. He's a really good friend of mine. I worked in his clinic for close to 3 years in Davenport, and he was practicing there. So I did all his x-rays and all his first consultations, and did all the line drawings on the x-rays and everything. And you know, you got to scope the patients and compare your findings to his findings. So I I really went very deep very quickly. I was the vice president of the Gonstead Club, and we had something called 9:15 classes, which were or clubs, which every day at 9:15 you had an hour break, and people would divide into their particular areas of interest. And we had the Gonstead Club that people came to, and we did lectures in Gonstead for the other students.
Wow.
So I got into that very quickly. And I also got into the extremity stuff in my first trimester at Palmer. So I started doing those seminars also right from the start, you know.
Yeah, I've seen that with a couple of
technique
the
part of chiropractic very early.
Yeah, I've seen that with a few of the Gonstead people. Like I've met or spoke to a few of them where they're like, yeah, I started the first quarter of school and just followed it right the way through. I remember speaking to this is a Gondroid in Germany, and I said, have you always used it? Like even in student clinic, you didn't use any other technique? No, he says that the only time I ever did another technique was to pass the exam. So I remember vaguely doing a SOT exam or a Thompson exam. He's like, apart from that, I've never adjusted anyone with anything but Gonstead. I'm like, whoa, like these guys are hardcore.
Exactly the same with me. I'd never done anything else than Gonstead until I met Jean-Pierre Merseman when I started working for Milan, you know.
And
I used exclusively Gonstead for 22 years.
Okay. And how did the Gonstead stuff lead to the extremities? Because now people in Europe anyway, we kind of know you more for the extremities side of things, and I want to get you over here again to do an extremity seminar. How did that happen?
Well, one thing didn't really lead to another. I mean, there was a little bit of extremity teaching in the Gonstead system, but not very. They didn't go very deeply into it or anything like that. Dr. Doug Cox, he did a little bit of extremity, covered a little bit of extremities in his case management classes at Manhorb, but they didn't touch extremity adjusting in the technique classes at Manhorb at that time. So I wanted to learn technique. I was always interested in sports. I did track and field and football myself when I was younger, and I had quite a few injuries. I'd gone to physiotherapists and wasn't very happy with what they did for me when I was a player and an athlete. So I wanted to get into sport. I knew I would like to get into the sports part of the treatment or of the job. So I heard about this guy in Davenport called Mitch Malley, who was the chiropractor for the San Francisco 49ers, which was like the super team in football at that time. He was the chiropractor for Lou Ferrigno, who played the Hulk. He was the chiropractor for
Arnold's rival.
Yeah, for a guy called Michael Nunn, who was the world champion boxer. So he had a lot of athletes that he took care of, and he was kind of famous for his extremity work. And I had a bad ankle, so I started out in my first trimester as his patient, because the Gonstead guys that I went to see, they couldn't do anything with my ankle, and everybody. I had a few friends that were ahead of me in school who said, you got to check out Dr. Malley, you know, see if he can do something with your bad ankle. And I went to see him as a patient, and he cleared out my ankle quickly with using techniques that I've never seen anybody else do, you know. So first, when I first heard he started doing seminars for students. I just signed up in my first trimester for the basic seminar, the lower extremity, and then I did the upper extremity, and then I did the advanced, and then I did the whole thing another time, and then I started interning a little bit for him and helping him out at the seminar. So I got them for free. So I redid the seminars multiple times.
Right.
I can't remember how many times I used to have a book that I put all my seminars into just to see how many seminars I did, but I can't remember now how many times I did it, but I did it a lot of times. So I did that parallel to the Gonstead work, you know. I would go to his seminars. Usually they were either on a Wednesday, I think, or in a weekend. And then I also had my Sunday night classes at Troxel doing Gonstead. So I would go from one thing to another all the all the time, or Monhorb weekends, you know, once a month. We had seminars at Monhorb. So I would go there if there was a seminar on there, you know. So I just tried to be like a sponge and absorb everything I could from the people that I knew were good and who made it in practice, you know.
Yeah, it's amazing whenever it's amazing how quickly you'll absorb it as well whenever you're in a position where you're teaching it or you're at least assisting teaching it. So that's what I did with Daniel Sterling and MLS. I probably did like 5 as a participant and then started shadowing, still participating, not really coaching as such. And since then, like in my student career, I think I've done 15 MLS and 15 Syntropy. And actually the first Syntropy one I did was their Extremities, which I'd really recommend to anyone listening. I've only done it once, I'll do it again. But I'd like to go deeper into it with you guys at some point as well. And I'm reading a book at the moment, and I found an interesting passage about extremities. I'm reading Gonstead, the Adjuster by Matthew Arman.
Cool.
And I love the book. I can't put it down. And I was reading it about 20 minutes before this call, and I found a really interesting paragraph. And they're talking about, they had the Gonstead technique, and now they're heading more towards what he was doing with extremities. We were trying to understand his understanding of the knee subluxation, the misalignment, and how to correct it, and the line drawing that could be taught at the seminar to teach the seminar attendees. We spent hours and hours with him, Gonstead, trying to have him explain how the knee would rotate and subluxate. We had several apparatus to figure this out, and finally we took an X-ray mailing tube and we drew a knee on it. We went over how it shifted and had him go over it. I don't know if we ever really accomplished it, picking his brain enough to really understand what he was seeing in there. He was a good teacher if you spent enough time with him and listened. So I think they had a bit of a time trying to, that was most of the battle, wasn't it? It was like trying to figure out what he was doing in his head, you know?
Yeah. They never put much of the extremity stuff in writing, you know. There's a little bit of TMJ stuff in Plogger's book and a little bit of other stuff, but it hasn't really been put in writing. So my Gonstead extremity stuff, I learned most of it from Dr. Doug Cox, Alex's brother, and from a guy called Mark Working, who died, I think, last year, who practiced in Peoria, Illinois. He was a Gonstead diplomat, and they put on some seminars in Gonstead. So I still mix in a little bit of the Gonstead into the Mali, especially when it comes to knee adjusting, you know, the AIN femur and stuff like that.
And especially with athletes.
Pardon?
Especially useful with athletes.
Yeah, especially useful with athletes, and also it's a part of usually of a descending chain of events in the body. So it comes usually from higher up and down into the knee, the AIN. But the ascending chain of events usually leads to a PX tibia, you know. So I use both of the techniques there quite a bit. I've modified them a little bit, but the analysis and the lines of drive are the same that Doug and Mark Working used to teach me back at Palmer.
That's fascinating.
And I did some seminars with a guy called Charette also, who was a foot levelers guy who did some extremity stuff, and Kevin Heron did some extremity stuff, and so I mixed in a little bit of those guys also, but my main influence was Mali, no doubt.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, that leads us to that next chapter then. So you're doing you have your associateship, you're basically a Gondroid, you're doing pure Gonstead.
Oh yeah, I'm a Gondroid. I'm taking full spine x-rays, I'm drawing line drawings, I'm scoping, and I'm adjusting purely Gonstead. I'd never adjusted anything else but Gonstead until except from the extremities. I don't think I've ever actually adjusted a segment anything else than Gonstead. I've maybe mixed in some AK stuff, or put a couple of patients in my career on SOT blocks if they were so bad I didn't dare to adjust them or something like that, you know. Right. But I would say still all my osseous adjusting is Gonstead.
And then
so I really only know how to adjust Gonstead because unlike the other guy that you talked about, that I never really bothered learning anything else. You know, I just did what I needed to get through the courses and the exams, and just forgot about it and kept on doing the Gonstead. You know,
And
so I was a little bit like this when I was.
It's a trait that I see a lot with the Gonstead people, is they tend to be like this. I'm trying to go into the Gonstead, but keep this open, you know. But sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes they're very tunnel vision, but that's part of the charm of it.
Us Gonstead guys are a little bit too much like this, because there's another aspect too that Gonstead doesn't take much care of, like the emotional aspect and stuff like that. So and especially in today's society, because the patients have changed a lot just since I graduated. You know, they used to be much more pure biomechanical. Now they're mixed in with shitty physiologies, biochemical situations, emotional situations, stress situations that are way tougher to solve. It's much more difficult to adjust a patient to now than it was 30 years ago, because the bodies have changed because of the chemical changes in the body and the emotional stress, and maybe like the electromagnetic stuff and the screens and the blue lights, and I don't know, but things have definitely changed. And when I speak to chiropractors that are older than me, they say the same. Jean-Pierre, he says that when he started, patients were way easier to adjust. You got much cleaner sets on the patients than you do now. Now it's more of a, you got to work the segment more into place than just setting it, you know. So things have changed, you know, and we have to change a little bit with it to be able to cover all the bases of the patient's needs, you know.
Well, that's why we need to raise the bar, especially over here in Europe, because there's not many people doing pure Gonstead over here in Europe, and I think that's a shame. I think we need more. But I think one of the things that kind of turns people off, I was speaking about this with a classmate today, one of the things that kind of frightens people away from it is that they're so intense, you know. I think it's because they put so much care and attention into the analysis, and it's like, okay, we're looking for the subluxation, we don't want to adjust compensation. When you do it to that level of specificity, everything else, and I get it, like everything else kind of seems like a waste of time, and I think that's why they tend to be dismissive of our techniques.
Yeah, and I think if you want to be a good adjuster, at least for a limited amount of time, you have to be a little bit like this, because you have to go deep enough to perfect your technique.
Yeah.
When I go around and teach, you know, especially in the seminars where I teach spinal adjusting as well, and when I visit other chiropractors, I feel that the chiropractors, the new chiropractors or the newer chiropractors, a lot of them, also from my generation by all means, lack in specificity. I mean, they don't care if for a thoracic vertebra, for example, they'll just put the patient on the stomach. They won't even palpate properly, see if it's a rotated left or right, or if there's a wedge on it, and they'll just put the double thenar and just push it P to A, you know. And for me, that's you can get some pretty good results with that as well, just by getting movement into the spine. But I think we owe it to chiropractic to have a little bit more of a rationale, a little bit more of an analysis and thinking behind what we do, instead of just pushing on spines, you know.
Yeah,
that's my opinion.
I agree with everything you said. I think it's nice to have that base level, but after that, there's another level that you can go to. And if you don't know that level exists, it's not your fault. But if you know that it's there and you choose to stay down there, to me that it's a bit of a shame. You might get them in and they feel better, and you make a crack and everyone's happy. Yeah. But the symptom remains. You might even clear up symptoms for a short period of time, but unless you clear that subluxation, it's going to come back. And now you're creating patients that are dependent on you instead of getting them. What was it Gonstead said? Like, are they getting relief or are they getting well?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it was spot on in that sentence there, because you can always create some relief, but we're not supposed to be a paracetamol. We're supposed to find the subluxation and fix it, not just treat it, you know. And it's damn difficult sometimes. I have patients too that come back all the time, either because it's too hard, or I can't figure it out properly, or because they have a biochemistry and a physiology that is not congruent with having a healthy spine, for example. So we all have those patients, but at least I think we should try, and do our best, and try not to be sloppy and careless about what we do, But that's another thing that about the narrow-mindedness, because it's also has two sides, because when I started, when I was at Palmer, a lot of the guys said to me, oh, you shouldn't go into one technique that early. You have to try out the different techniques and blah, 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 and stuff like that. But I think if I had done that, I wouldn't have reached the level of competency in my chosen technique. Because you see a lot of people, they go to TBM one weekend, they go to SOT, they go to NOT, they go to this and they go to that, and dry needling and laser and shockwave therapy. And I mean, if you do that from the beginning, I think it's both of you get a little bit confused, because it's not that easy to, when you're a young guy without any clinical experience, it's not easy to separate the crap from the good stuff, to put it like that, and also it takes time to develop your chiropractic personality, if you want to call it that, to see, to kind of mold yourself into the chiropractor that suits you as a person, and not just what everybody tells. Oh, this is the greatest. Oh, you have to try this. This is the best. Oh, you have to do this, and you have to,
right.
Learn the basics and then work step by step. I wasn't ready to learn SOT and AK until I'd been in practice for almost 25 years. 20 years at least. That's when I had developed enough that it was getting a little bit. I needed some more challenge, and that's when there's a saying that when the student is ready, the teacher appears, or the master appears, and that's when Jean-Pierre suddenly came into my life, and I started evolving to my next level as a chiropractor.
So then,
so I think it's people have to be a little bit patient, because you can't learn everything at once.
With your daughter, for example, whenever she's in chiropractic college, will you tell her, like, okay, find the one that resonates with you and go deep? Or would you say, go to the class or go to the club, for a week or two, go to the weekend seminar, but then at some point, 6 months, a year down the line, pick, what was it? I think it was Arno Bernier said this. He said, instead of digging lots of shallow holes, dig one really deep hole until you hit the oil.
Yeah, I agree with Arno there. And we've already talked a lot about that, obviously, since she's starting in January, And I think, at least if she wants to come back to Norway and practice, because 99% of the patients in Norway are osseous adjusters, and some are good, some are not as good as everywhere else in the world. But I've told her you have to learn a good osseous technique. And once you master that, you can start looking into the more esoteric world of chiropractic and the more psychological and emotional stuff. But learn your osseous adjustments, because that's, in Norway at least, that's what the patient expects when they come in. And if they come in and they expect to get a good adjustment, at least they'll be happy if they get a good adjustment. Then you can learn the other stuff as you progress as an individual, both as a human being and as a chiropractor. Because I would have been ready to listen to what Jean-Pierre told me 25, 26, 27, 28 years ago.
You had the tunnel vision.
Would have been ready for it, because I'm a kind of mechanical kind of guy. I want an explanation what's wrong, and I want also a good explanation on what to do to fix it.
Right.
And I'm not like, naturally, and I'm not a very touchy-feely guy. I like the more mechanical A plus B equals C kind of linear approach.
Yeah.
But after a while working, you see that the body is not a linear structure. It's a chaotic structure. So everything can cause everything, and that's when it really starts getting interested. But I had to build up to it.
Well, before coming to chiropractic, I did a degree in sports coaching. So I've worked with elite athletes mostly in boxing, but whenever I entered chiropractic, I never got into it with the consciousness of, oh, I'm gonna start doing it with athletes. Uh, Dived in a little bit into the extremity stuff, but not necessarily specifically for athletes. So I'm curious to know, for anyone listening to this, tell us the story of like how you started like with the athletes, and then how you got to that top level, because you were with AC Milan. Like, tell us the story of how that came about and your adventures there.
Well, like I said, it started. I've been lucky. It's been a lot of coincidences along the way that led to this. You know, like I said, I started working in sports very early. Just when I graduated, I got into the Klinikk in Norway, where I worked for 2 years. And then I moved to where I live now, Egersund, and it's a small city, about 12,000 people on the southwest coast of Norway, and they really don't have any elite teams like that. They had a few elite athletes in the track and field and swimming and stuff like that I pretty quickly started working with. But I worked in low-level athletes. But the thing with sports is, if you have a fourth division team or if you're at AC Milan, the injuries are the same and the experience you gain is the same. It's just that there's a little bit more at stake at Milan than in the fourth division team. But for the player as an individual, it's just as important for a football player in the third division or fourth division to get well from his injury as it is for a guy in Milan to get well from his injury, because he wants to play football or do his sports anyway, you know. So I never looked at it like that. I just enjoyed working with sports, you know, and I've always enjoyed like the locker room kind of joking and everything. So I've always enjoyed being part of that feeling, both when I played myself and later on as a chiropractor or team doctor. So I had a lot of years that I didn't work with a lot of high level athletes, and then the Norwegian Chiropractic Association, they asked me and myself and a good friend of mine also called Atle. We call him Big Atle. I'm little Atle.
You're the little one. Jesus,
I'm little Atle, yeah.
He must be
So
huge.
he did a lot of Mali stuff too, and he's a good extremity adjuster. So the Norwegian Chiropractic Association asked us to come up with seminars to teach the Norwegian chiropractors extremity adjusting, you know. So that's when we started doing the seminars together for way back in, I can't even remember which year it was, probably 96 or 97 or something like that, 98. So we started putting together the seminars and teaching it to the Norwegian chiropractors, and pretty soon there came chiropractors from Denmark, and we got asked to go to Denmark and England, and it just kind of evolved from that. So I just worked in my hometown, and of course, as more people got to know me, I got some elite athletes from all over Norway that came, and also a few guys that I used to work with at the Olympic Training Center. They would come and see me, but it was an 8-hour drive from Oslo to where I work. So it was either they had to go on a plane and then rent the car. So it was a little bit cumbersome, but I still kept in touch with the guys. And then really like 7 years ago, probably, Jean-Pierre Merseman, he spoke at the Oslo Chiropractic Symposium about his work in Milan and how he built the Milan lab, the sports injury lab in Milan, which was based on chiropractic principles of the thoughts, the trauma, toxins, and thoughts, you know, as the reasons of the subluxation or of the problem, and everything was evolving around the chiropractic thinking at the Milan lab. So he was talking in Norway, doing a seminar about that, a talk, and I was standing outside the seminar in the exhibition area, and I was adjusting a lot of other chiropractors, you know. They would come and ask me, hey, can you look at my ankle or my knee or my shoulder or my back or whatever? And he saw that I did a lot of shoulder adjusting, and he brought his wife, who's a dentist in Como, and she had 2 bad shoulders. She was thinking about having surgery in her shoulders because she couldn't lift her arms more than 90 degrees. So he asked me if I could take a look at her and see if I could do anything. And of course, a little bit for fun and a little bit seriously, I said that, yeah, sure, but if I fix her, you have to invite me to Milan so I can can look at how you guys are working down there. So.
And who's this guy saying, "Can you fix my wife's shoulder"?
Yeah.
Who is it?
Jean-Pierre Mercerman.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. So she got a lot better, and he invited me to Milan a week later. He wrote me a nice message, and she was a lot better. And if I wanted, I could come, and he would show me around the AC Milan and the Milan lab and everything. So I went down there and stayed a few days, and I didn't adjust any players or anything like that. But I got a tour of the place, and we talked a lot about chiropractic, and I followed him in his clinic, and he asked me to adjust a few patients there, but nothing at Milanello. And then we didn't really talk to each other for about 6 months, and then he suddenly called me about 6 months after with about two players in Milan that had been injured for a long time, and asked me if I could come there and come down for a week and work on them. So I went down, and they were both national team players for Italy, so they were important players from Milan.
Yeah.
And I got them well pretty quickly. One guy he was pretty okay after one adjustment, and the other guy I think I adjusted 3 times, and they were back in training. One had been out for 18 weeks and the other for 12 weeks, and
wow,
they had surgery and everything looked nice on the MRIs, that looked like everything had healed up, but they couldn't run. One had a knee problem and the other one had a foot problem after a meniscus surgery and a stress fracture of the 5th metatarsal. But everything looked like it had healed up, but they were still in pain. So I ended up adjusting his knee and the other guy's foot, and they got well and could go back to training. And that's when I got the offer first I got an offer if I wanted to move down and work like full time for Milan, but I didn't want to sell my practice because it's an uncertain world, sports world. You change the coach and you're fired along with the coach, so we kind of agreed on once a month, and since that, for the last almost 7 years now, I've been it's actually 7 years pretty accurately since I came there the first time. I've been going to Milano once a month, except now because of the COVID situation, I haven't been able to go. Yeah.
So that's a bit of a step up from the 4th division, but
the
problems are the same.
A step up from the lower divisions, yeah. But it's nice to see that what you do works. I mean, biomechanics are universal, whether it's a star player or it's an old lady that steps off a curb and twists her ankle. An ankle is an ankle, and biomechanics are biomechanics. And it was nice to see that what I did in my clinic with the regular patients, regular people, worked just as well when I did it at Milanello. So
yeah,
it was nice.
I don't mind adjusting the extremities. Like I wrestled with it for a little while because there is that like, oh, is this chiropractic, But I was like, well, if it's the extremity that's affecting, say you have a problem in the ankle and that's knocking your hips out of alignment, you can adjust the pelvis all you want, but it's always going to be there. And if it might, you don't have to adjust it every time. It might be the first 3 visits and then it clears up. So I mean, I haven't worked with AC Milan, but I do have a patient who likes to skateboard, and he came in like kind of skeptical about chiropractic, like didn't really, is this going to work? Is it not? And he's complaining about the foot. I love using the drop piece to adjust the talus and navicular, and adjusted it, and it cleared up in 1 visit. And that guy's still with me a year and a half later. Loves it. Gets adjusted once every fortnight or so. So they clear up fast, and I do see the value in it. But a question that came to my head when you were talking there, when you're with the players at AC Milan, are you adjusting them full spine, or is your job only extremities?
No, I adjust some of them also spinally, but they have a chiropractor there full time. So I'm kind of the Mr. Fix-It guy that comes and helps out when, but mostly extremities. Yeah. But if they're difficult to adjust, or if he wants me to take a look at something, then I'll help out with that. Okay. I have a chiropractor there every day, so it works full time, and he's a very good chiropractor. So his name is Stefano Arata. Right. He doesn't get around too much to seminars because they play almost every weekend, so he's not as visible as I am in the chiropractic world, but he's a great chiropractor.
And I recall seeing a picture of you, working on somebody's ankle, and you see the whole medical team around with the white lab coats, and you've probably got the doctors and the physios of the doctors and all the professionals. How do you integrate with that team, especially as a newcomer? Do you find that they're quite open-minded and they're like, okay, let's have a try, or are they like second guessing you at every corner? What's it like?
Well, they were never second guessing me at all. But of course, once you get in new to a team like that, people feel a little bit threatened in the beginning, at least, because they think that maybe you're after one of their jobs, and one has to leave for you to come in. So it took me a little while before they started socializing with me. But after about 6 months there, then they started opening up. Also, there was the language barrier. My Italian at the time was pretty limited, to put it the least. So and a lot of them, they weren't very fluent in English. So there was also the language barrier. Right. But I've never had a problem really relating to them. And pretty quickly you understand who's good at what, so you know how to, you just have to be a little bit, have a mindset that it's okay to share the patient with other, and not be in it for the glory for yourself, for ego reasons. You do what's best for the player. Right. So you adjust them if they have something that could benefit from shock wave or needles or whatever, and of course you have the whole rehab part of it. Then you involve all the other people in the process, and you have to be a team player in a multi-discipline team like that. If you're in the lower divisions, you're probably going to be alone with the players, so you have to do everything yourself. But once you get up in the level, then we had 18 people in the medical team and full-time people in the medical team in Milan, so you have to be sharing, and not try to hide and I'm the special guy, and I'm gonna take all your patients and stuff like that. That doesn't work at all. You have to put your ego on the side, and then do whatever you can for the good of the team.
And I guess that's applicable to practice as well, as if you're working in your practice, or if you're working with an elite team, the ego is not going to help you when you're adjusting.
I've tried to build my clinic like a little bit like the Milan team, that I have people that have different expertise. We are 3 chiropractors and 3 physiotherapists. Then I have an acupuncturist coming in once a week, and we try to play each other good. I have one physiotherapist who's really good with rehab. Another guy is really good with kinesio taping and dynamic taping, and he makes orthotics for the patients that need that. Then I have another physio who's a really good hands-on massage, hands-on muscle work, and then we're 3 chiropractors that each have one works a lot with children. I work a lot with sports, and one has more of a family practice. So we try to be very open with sending patients to each other and asking for help, and also very quick to ask for help, because even no matter how bright you are, there's always somebody who's going to be brighter than you in that particular area, So you have to kind of develop. You have to think of it like a team. In a football team, you can't have 11 goalkeepers or 11 strikers. You have to have 1 goalkeeper and 2 fullbacks and 2 central defenders and 3 or 4 midfielders, and then a striker or 2.
Yeah, I never would have had a problem thinking of it as a team and like referring. So I'll say to patients, I'll be like, yo, you might have something going on with the diet. Like, I think we need to find you a nutritionist or dietitian, as it were. Or I'll be like, yeah, like a little bit of soft tissue work might help. We'll try and find you somebody. What I don't like is when, because I'm still in school, so you have to jump through the hoops, don't you? Yeah. It's when they're saying like, okay, what would you do in this case with this patient's nutritional problem? And I'm like, I wouldn't do anything, because that's not my area, but I've no qualms with referring them to somebody. In fact, I read in here, it surprised me, Gonstead at one point, he had a there's certificates in this book. He had a degree in naturopathy, and at his first clinic at Mount Horeb, before the huge one, he rented the downstairs to a massage woman. It's in the book. I was surprised to see that. I'm like, well, if Gonstead, I'm sure he wasn't there rubbing the hamstrings, but he had no problem. Like, hey, this might help you, you know, but it's not that you necessarily have to do it. You just have to know your place in that team.
Exactly. And I have no interest in, I mean, my interest is in adjusting people and trying to figure out what's wrong with them. It's not in doing a tedious rehab session of 2 months for a cruciate ligament injuries. I'm just not interested in it.
That's not your game.
Enough, you know? So I prefer having a good person with me. And in my earlier days, I had a solo practice. It was only me. Then I found good people around me in the city that I could refer patients to, and who also referred the patients back, because that's also important. It has to go both ways, you know. Some people, you refer the patient to them and they will try to keep that patient forever instead of referring it back. So it has to be a team. There's no I in a team, you know. So if you want to work with people, they have to want to work with you back, you know. So after a while, I just got tired of searching for people who were good and tried to just get them into my office and have them work with me in the office, because then I have a lot more control of what's happening to the patients, you know.
I think we have a tendency to, I see it a lot in my school. We tend to want to bring on that role of like, I can fix it all. So I'm going to be the chiropractor, but I'm also going to look at your supplement regime, and I'm going to look at your sleep, and I'm going to look at, and I'm like, I've no problem doing that, but just personally, I don't want to do it. I'd rather refer to someone who's studied nutrition a lot more in a lot more depth than I have. Like, I have a degree in sports coaching, so I know more than the average person walking on the street, but it's just not my specialty. So why not go to the specialist? Well, that was my philosophy anyway.
And same with me. I have no problems people using whatever competency they have. But if there's another guy down the street who's way more competent than you, then I don't see the point in me giving them advice about nutrition when I don't have, in my opinion, enough competency to do that. But of course, you can go deep into nutrition as a chiropractor and learn a lot. And I have friends who are chiropractors who know way more about nutrition than I do, and who work a lot nutritionally with patients. And, you know, glory to them. I don't think it's wrong. It's just not my cup of tea, you know. And I want to have fun when I work. I don't want to do the stuff that I'm bored with, or I just want to do what I think is fun, you know. I'm 52 years old. I've been working for almost 30 years. I hope that I can work for another 25 or so, because I have no intention of retiring ever, if I can. So, but if I'm going to work for another 25 years, I want to do what I think is fun, which is basically to figure out stuff and to adjust it, you know.
Well, I guess for some people, figuring out that they have a magnesium deficiency and giving them the supplement, for them, that's fun, which is cool.
Yeah,
as you said, more glory to them, but
big kick, and just not for me.
Yeah, nothing would bore me more. For people listening, like you said at the start of the podcast, that a lot of it it was coincidental. You were in the right place at the right time with the right person. And you've said that before on the stage. I've seen you. But for anyone listening that maybe they're about to graduate, or maybe they're a new grad who's really passionate about sports, and for them, like, I want a family practice, but let's say for me, it's my dream to get into the football team or the rugby team and be the athlete's chiropractor. Is there any pragmatic advice that you would say to people to accomplish those outcomes?
Yeah, a lot of people in the practice management seminars and stuff like that, they warn you against working for free. For me, that was a good way of doing it. I got a little bit paid from the one handball team I started out with, but for the other two teams, I did it for free just to get experience, you know. It's a good way of building practice, because these players have parents, they have brothers and sisters that come in to see you in your office if you do a good job on the players. So it's a way of building practice. And don't be afraid to ask like a youth team or something like that. The main thing is to get experience, you know, get clinical experience. And like I say, a knee or an ankle, it's the same in a 16-year-old youth player as it is in a and a professional player in Milan or Ajax or Galatasaray or wherever, you know. So just start small, build your skills, build your experience, and let things evolve. I've never done anything consciously to move up in the world of sports at all, really. I just tried to do a good job on all the patients that came in, and I still have a family practice. I don't have a sports practice at all. I mean, sports people are maybe maximum 10% on my practice. You know, the rest are babies and kids and old people and welders and farmers and fishermen and office people. You know, all kinds of people, like a family practice. So that's my bread and butter, is the family practice. I don't see myself as a sports injury guy. I just adjust sports people, as well as other people, you know.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I mean, it might annoy people to say, but a spine's a spine. So the spine in the, you know, the elite basketball player is going to be the same as the one. Okay, maybe they have different stresses upon their body, but a spine's a spine. Sports chiropractic, like it's just chiropractic. Or I think Sigafus said at one point, Jim Sigafus, he was like, I don't know if I would agree with this now, but he's like pediatric chiropractic. That's a crock of crap as well, because I know what a baby looks like. I know what a spine looks like. I know where the bones are. And sure enough, I wouldn't put as much force into a baby as I was put into a fully grown man, but the technique is the same. Now, I don't know if I'd 100% agree with that, but I see the point that he was making is, if you look at it like, oh, it's an elite athlete, like I better do a good job, that's when you're going to get in your head. Whereas if you're just like, look, it's just a spine, it's just a knee.
It's a human being. It's a spine, it's an ankle, it's a knee, whatever you're treating. And it's just as important to your 60-year-old normal patient to get well in that spine, or and to have a good functional life so they can play with their children. It's just as important to them as it is for the football player or track and field guy or handball player or whatever, you know.
Yeah. So I set up my practice. I've got my family practice going. I go to like a youth team or like a low level team, and I just say, what could you say? Just be like, hey, I'm a chiropractor. I'll work for you. You can send whoever you want for 6 months. And if you don't like it after that, if it doesn't resonate with you, that's fine. If at the end of that period you want to negotiate something, is that how you would go about it, or what do you suggest?
I always charged for the people that came into my clinic. I asked them, you know, hey, well, I got coincidentally into the very good handball team, so I would say to the other handball team, hey, I'm the team chiropractor for this team. You know, are you into? I would like to work a little bit more with the sports people. Are you interested? I can come to one of your practices a week and take a look at whoever player wants to get adjusted before or after the practice, and then you know, you guys can see if you like it. You know, you don't have to charge, or we can look in a half a year or in a year if you think it's valuable enough that you want to pay me something, and then we can talk about it. You know.
Okay.
And then you just have to deliver the goods. You know,
right.
and do it properly, even if you don't charge for it. Which and then of course you can go to the next team, one level up, and say, hey, I've been a chiropractor for this team and that team, and I've been doing a lot of seminars and sports and things. I'm interested in working with your players. You know, would you guys be interested in me coming in once a week to one of your practices? You know, and see if this is something for you, and especially if there's also maybe a paid physiotherapist there or something like that, then you talk to the physiotherapist and say, hey, maybe I can complement on what you're already doing with the patient, and we can put a system together for the good of the team. I'm not trying to take your job. I'm just trying to be a complement to your job, and then we can see after 6 months or after the season how we've enjoyed working together, and see if we can build something from there. You know. So just present it. Be a little bit humble. I don't think it's smart to come in there and be like the big boss and hey, I'm here, you know, you guys can fire the physiotherapist. I'm coming in, you know. I think it's smart to have a little bit of humility and a little bit of contact with it, be a little bit contacted with the ground, you know.
Yeah.
Be a little bit grounded when you go in there.
Yeah,
because
I had to learn that lesson the hard way. Entering,
we all did.
Yeah, you come in with the ego and you're like, you're going to what? You're going to an osteopath? You don't need to go to an osteopath anymore. Like we're gonna look after you. Now I'm like, oh, you're going to an osteopath? Cool. All right, let's adjust them and let the hand speak for itself. And if they want to leave the osteopath after that, let them have at it.
Exactly. Let the patient choose.
Mm.
So if you want to keep that patient, you just got to add more value to that patient's life than the osteopath does. Then the patient's going to gravitate to you anyway, without you trying to sell yourself or use all kinds of tricks to have them come.
So
people have to be a little bit more patient sometimes than what they are. A lot of people, they want the instant gratification and the instant big practice, and put a lot of money and energy into marketing and stuff like that. If they put that energy into helping the patients that were already coming into their clinic, I think they would be a lot better off than having to attract that many new patients all the time through marketing and through this and that and yada yada yada. Just put your energy into doing the best job you possibly can in your clinic. Ask your patients for referrals. Do lay lectures. I did a lot of lay lectures in my earlier years, like new patient lectures, and I would go to Rotary clubs and I would go to sports teams and ask them, hey, I've been working a lot in sports. I have a talk here that I think could be interesting for all the coaches. Do you want me to come in on a club night and talk to all your coaches from the youth department, for example? Stuff like that. Lions clubs, whatever.
You touched on an interesting point there. You said about instant gratification, and the question popped into my mind. Have you found, I've heard about this with athletes before, is a lot of the time with athletes, it is about that instant gratification, because it's like, I hurt my shoulder, fix my shoulder so I can get back onto the court. Have you experienced that? And when that happens, how do you deal with it? Because it might not be immediate.
A lot of my friends who have worked in sports have been frustrated by that, because athletes never have time to heal up completely, and they just have to heal up well enough to function again on the pitch or on the track or wherever. So you're always in a rush there. So it's always about, and I don't think like top sports is healthy for you. A lot of these guys end up with hip replacements when they're 40 years old and stuff like that. So
it's extremism.
Yeah, and they're always balancing on the verge of overtraining and stuff like that, and total breakdown, really. So you have to understand what kind of world you're moving into. I mean, these top football players, they make maybe 2 million euros or 3 million euros a year playing football. If they don't play, they're not interesting for the club. There won't be no other club, bigger club is going to come in and pick them up for an even better contract. They're dependent, and a lot of them, they don't have a lot of education in the background there, so they need to make those years as a top sportsman work for them. So they need to accumulate some cash and some money, so they have something to live on later on, if they're lucky enough not to squander it away. So these guys are in a little bit of a different world than we are. We have the luxury we can afford long-term thinking. We can take the healthy choice, for example, instead of the choice that makes you feel better tomorrow. Then, so if you go in there with this mentality that you're gonna ream them out if they take a Voltaren or preach and everything like that, you're kind of gonna be in the wrong place. These guys just need to get well enough to function at either their maximum or as close to the maximum level as they can, as you can get them in a reasonable amount of time. But when that is said, in Milan, for example, I've seen very little drug use. And when they started the Milan lab, a couple of years after, when it had been running for a couple of years, they had up in the use of painkillers and non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs with 98% compared to before the Milan clinic. So you can do a lot just by working on prevention and testing them and seeing when they are in the right zone for maximum performance and when they're drifting out of that zone, so you can pick them up before they get injured and pull them back into the zone of max performance. But of course, you're always going to have the injuries like fractured legs and stuff like that. You can't prevent somebody from kicking you hard in the foot so your leg breaks, you know. So you can't prevent everything, but you can prevent a hell of a lot, you know.
Yeah. So the first step is you got to be able to deliver the goods, and that's why go to your seminar. I'm gonna get you over here. We're gonna organize a seminar together, and then after that, don't be afraid just to
my
work for free.
seminar.
Come to
There's
the
a
club.
lot of good seminars. I mean, Jean-Pierre Merseman, he's doing a seminar this weekend that I think is going to be excellent. I'll be speaking a little bit on how to adjust the jaw and also how to adjust the ankle on the seminar. But he's going to cover all his stuff there. He's a brilliant guy. You can learn from a lot of people. There are a lot of good doctors out there. I mean, I do it my way. I teach basically what I do. I can't, like, I tell people when they ask me, hey, can I do it like this? Sure, you can do it. There are a lot of ways of doing this stuff. And as long as your biomechanic and your rationale behind doing it is on the spot, and then you can do it in a lot of ways. I have to teach people, of course, the way I do it, but you can go to a lot of good seminars out there. But just try to become good at what you do. You know, that's the main thing. I think you have to be able, like I said, to deliver the goods.
So that's step one, is be able to deliver the goods. Go to your seminar, go to the other one that you were talking about, though. It's on this weekend. Syntropy is another good one. After that, don't be afraid to just go to a team and say, hey, I'll give you 6 months. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. And let's see what happens. And then after that, you just go to the next team and you work your way up from there.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's simple, but not easy.
It's simple, but not easy. It takes time. I mean, my first couple of years, I had a team every night. I worked from 7 in the morning until 7 at night in the clinic, and then I went straight to the whatever team I was working on and followed them through the practice. I would be home around 9:30, 10 o'clock, eat a little bit of supper, and get up the next morning at 6 and go to work from 7 and repeat it. And then I would work every weekend at the Olympic Training Center. So I put hours into this stuff, and so you shouldn't be afraid to put a little bit of man hours into doing it. There's no such thing as a free lunch, as they say. You have to lay the groundwork and be willing to commit the time and the energy to do it right. You know.
I'm just laughing because with reading that book there, from 7 in the morning to 9 at night, that would be Clarence Gonstead on holiday. He's on holiday doing that.
That would be Clarence Gonstead on holiday. He had a saying that he never ended work the same day as he started it. You know, he would always work until next day. Yeah, he was crazy.
Reading that, I read that book, and you read it and you're like, oh my God, the drive and the passion and the vision that it takes to be able to do that. And we can aspire to do that. But then at the same time, I look at it and I'm like, oh man, like maybe he could have had another couple of decades if he just chilled out a little bit. And what's the point? Like you get this legend status, but then your body's screwed up and you're the richest man in the graveyard, you know?
And I knew Elvira Gonstead well as well, his wife.
She died in the fire, I learned today.
She died in a fire, but I got to know her before that because we hosted her in the Gonstead Club at Palmer many times. We would take her down from Wisconsin and you know, dine her and have her talk about Gonstead. She was very bitter at that, and I mean, it comes at a price, and I'm not willing to commit that amount of time now that I used to commit. And also, you get after a while, you know, after a few years, you get children and a family, and I was never willing to sacrifice time with my kids for. Of course, you always sacrifice a little bit, you know, but I tried to make it reasonable. I would work maybe until 5 or 6 or 7 at night, and then I would have some hours that I could spend with my kids while they were still awake, or I would go from work and go to watch them play a football game or something, and then go back to work maybe and work a little bit after that. So I would try to schedule that in, because I learned a lot from Elvira Gonstead. She was she was angry at chiropractic. She was angry at Clarence. They never got any kids. They never had any time together. They had a lot of money, yeah, but she was sitting alone in that beautiful house in Monhorb without really anything to do. He was the big hero. He was getting all the attention and everything, and she was just she felt like she was just a prop, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't think necessarily Gonstead as a chiropractor, great role model, you know, but Gonstead as a family man, as a well-rounded human being, probably not as great of a role model, you know. So find a kind of a way, a place in between there, and you know, don't be connect with your kids and your wife and your family, and put the important things in life first, you know.
Yeah. This is a trend that you see with the legends of chiropractic, the really big names like the Gonsteads or the Sigafus of the world, is that yes, you have this legend status, and yes, it sounds good from the stage, and you see a lot of patients and you get these amazing results, but then sometimes when they're competing at that high level, comes at a price, family wise.
And you have to be willing to pay part of the price. I mean, I see a lot of young guys now, they ask me for a job in my clinic, for example, and it's like, oh, but I can't work later than 3 p.m. because I like to go surfing, and then I skateboard, and I have to have Fridays off because I want to go skiing, and then blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, Jesus, do you want to be a chiropractor, or do you want to have chiropractic as a hobby and be a surfer and skier? You know, you have to pay a little bit of a price if you want to become good, because it takes time and it takes a number of patients. You have to see in order to be a good adjuster, the most important thing you can do is to get your hands on a lot of people, you know.
Yeah. The one that always makes me laugh is passive income. I'm going to make passive income. Like, shut up, man. Just go and adjust people. Do you want to be a chiropractor or not?
It's much more fun with active income, you know.
Yeah.
Where you actually do something and they see the value in it and they pay you for it, you know.
Yeah. Well, this was a lot of fun, and I think anyone that wants to work with athletes will get some advice from this, and some good knowledge from it. I knew you were hardcore, and I knew you were good. I never knew you were that close to the source. That surprised me. I didn't know that you were so close to Clarence himself, and you're with Herb Wood and the Cox brothers.
I never met Clarence. He died way before, but I was lucky enough to get to know Alex Cox and Doug Cox and John and of course Dr. Ray Clinton, who worked at the clinic for a number of years with Gonstead, who was a big mentor of mine. And I was also lucky enough to meet a lady called Phyllis Markham. She did all the Gonstead's.
She did the
X-rays for him, and we used to go up there in a car and go to visit her in her house. She had quit the Gonstead clinic a long time ago. And she would have these loads and loads of x-rays in the basement. So we would go down there with her and she would put up an x-ray and explain, you know, when Gonstead saw something like that, he would adjust there and this. If you see this is going to be a compensation from something happening here. And, you know, and Dr. Gonstead always said, you know, if you have this kind of scenario, you have to look at this thing, you know. So it was just such a fountain and such a joy to get to know Phyllis and spend time with her in her basement there. And I learned so much X-ray analysis and how to interpret the X-rays from a biomechanical point of view from her, that it was, I was very lucky with the time I was at Palmer. I've been very lucky with the people I've met throughout my years in chiropractic and throughout my journey in chiropractic. I've had great mentors and role models, and it's I've been very blessed and very lucky, you know.
Yeah, that's some pedigree, Gonstead wise. I'm aware of the time, but I'm pumped listening to it. Before we wrap up, one question again that popped into my head there. It's not to make excuses, but it's a little bit easier in America to get access to these guys and go and see the diplomats and go and see the hardcore Gonstead people. Over in Europe, there's not many people like you. So for students like me that want to get into the Gonstead work, is there any advice you would give that we can, what can we read? What can we get access to? How can we help Gonstead grow in Europe?
most Gonstead chiropractors that I know personally, they're very happy to have students come into their clinic and stay for a day or two, or even a week in the clinic to observe. I have a lot of people coming to visit me. My other friends who do Gonstead, they have people coming to visit, you know. Also get together, if you are 2, 3, 4 guys, 5 guys wanting to do Gonstead, you know, look at the old videos, get together, do workshops. We had workshops every day in the 9:15 breaks. We would practice, and then we would practice most nights as well. And then you know, so we kind of got immersed into the whole thing. We were lucky. We were fortunate enough to have people like Herb Woods in the neighborhood, Larry Troxell in the neighborhood. We had a 2.5 hour drive up to Mount Horeb. You know, we had we had Mark working 2.5 hours away from us, so we could go, you know, go to these people and pick their brains, and you know, if people wanted to intern, they would ask somebody, hey, can I follow you around to the clinic? I'll vacuum your offices and I'll do your paperwork for you and I'll polish your car or whatever, you know. So try to find at least the closest guy to you who's a better Gonstead doctor than you are, and try to pick his brain, and then we'll try to move on to a bigger sphere where you find the best guy in a little bit bigger radius and the best guy in a little bit, and try to pick their brains, you know. Don't be afraid to ask them, can I come and see you? Can I help you do something in the office? Is there anything I can do for you? And then you can show me stuff in return. It's like a trade-off, you know, to just be a little bit out there, be a little bit proactive. Don't wait for everything to fall into your lap, you know.
Yeah, like the passive income.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, thank you so much for coming and sharing. Love to get you on again sometime. We can do some more of the stories of Mount Horeb, because we could talk for hours on that alone, I bet.
Pardon?
I said we could talk for hours on that alone, the stories from Mount Horeb and what these legends had to say to you when you were a student.
And then I have some stories that I would never tell you.
Yeah, I bet. All right, thank you so much, and happy to have you back on here again soon.
All righty, take care.